Hello, this is Daniel Michael with the Main Street Universe Radio Network on YouTube, soon to be a full-on podcast. Anyway, today I'm going to attempt to build a bridge. That's right, something difficult to do, building bridges between the Christians and the pagans. This is in light of some unfortunate events recently over the season that has just recently passed, depending on who you talk to. Halloween, or Samhain in the pagan community. And some extreme Christians, not all, of course, I'm not criticizing them all. Like I said, I'm here to build a bridge. Some on the extreme were harassing vendors at various fairs and festivals at different places in the country. Here is some social media quotes from them. Quote, "We stayed later than the psychics. We anointed their tents with oil. Worship shifts atmospheres and confuses the enemy's camp. Together we shock the darkness," unquote. So as part of this atmosphere shifting was, I believe, they punched an innocent person in the face. Is that part of your worship? Let me explain to you that you are not shocking the darkness. You are in fact slaves to a darkness that is not even your own. Since you apparently live very safe lives, your primal brain, which by the way we all have, still seeks danger, creating for you a phony enemy. You wage a war where those you even call the enemy don't have any interest in being in the battlefield in the first place. You're fighting people that don't want to fight. That's not a warrior. That's a bully. Halloween, Samhain, Halloween, whatever you want to call it, All Souls Day, All Saints Day, was actually a unifying force at one time, or a unified festival for Christian and pagan alike when we return. Halloween, or the pagan Samhain, was and is a festival marking the onset of winter, you see. Let me explain historically what you have wrong about it. What you have is the Hollywood Halloween. Okay, that's a bit of fun. When I was a kid, we trick-or-treated, and there wasn't as much of this blowback about the holiday, about it being so devilish. I mean, obviously, it's ghosts and ghouls and goblins and witches and da-da-da-da-da. But it was just a bit of fun. Moving on. You see, during agricultural economies, a time of community gathering, bonding, and planning was necessary. It was practical, unified by the common inevitability of a cold season to come, sometimes even called Winter's Eve. In other cultures, it had been called, November had been called the Blood Month. Regardless of the very specific debating involved of specific cultural interpretations, the realistic human history and practice would dictate that the coming of winter and the feeling that would happen of knowing the main harvest season is over, that it ends in an agricultural economy, would then, of course, invoke some fear, a natural human fear. It was agrarian economy, and you hope the harvest was good. Now, there are plants that grow in winter. I'm aware of that, but you know what I mean as a whole. Thus, a natural time seasonally is formed for elders, councils, people to gather and to plan their lives, their economies based, as I said, on harvest, livestock, etc. And so, of course, this gathering would involve celebration. And of course, since it's the cold season coming, the death and hibernation season coming, there was a big, calm, reflective, mature focus on death. Naturally then, as the Christians came, they adopted this. They decided to engage in this Halloween, the Samhain Halloween festival time anyway, since it was already in place before the other faith arrived. I actually had a person say to me, to my face one time, this was definitely an evangelical holy roller, who said, quote, that the pagan spring festival was a time of mating. Then Halloween or Samhain was a time they sacrificed their children to the devil, unquote. Folks, in an agricultural society that needs workers, what group of humans would sacrifice their children to a devil that, by the way, did not exist in their religion in the first place? A, it's against human nature. B, it's incredibly economically unpractical if you want to make a cold point about it. They need the next generation to work on the fields. Do I have to say anything more about that? How ridiculous is that? What do they do? Destroy the next generation? Moving on. So anyway, this time of cold, this time of hibernation, this time of death, there's a natural focus on things like the veil is thin between the two worlds, magic, divination, and again, a calm, mature honoring of the dead. And the Christians peacefully adapted this time of year. This was not a war. This was not a holy war. Since the time of year was being both celebrated and taken seriously anyway, meaning a serious gathering to debate the agrarian economical issues. So, this, my friends, was a peaceful adaptation, a unity of Christian and pagan, then celebrating together, or at least in peace, whether it was together or in separate little pods, whatever. To recognize and to mark the inevitable together. A time of cold, a time of quiet, a time recognized to be of death. Now, in the so-called information age, the algorithms have angry philosophical hacks cheaply referring to this inevitable time of stoic planning as a satanic intrusion of darkness. It's ridiculous. Grow up. Because darkness is not an intrusion or evil. It is in the darkness we are born. And in this incarnation anyway, we return. Unless maybe we're cremated or something. And then there is the promise of rebirth. Nature is cruel and kind. Mother Earth grants us evidence of this cycle of life and death every single year with the changing of the seasons. A promise that she has never broken. To many in the pagan faith, this represents, in real time, that you were never born, you never really die, and you're always part of this cycle. A cycle of unbroken promise. An unbroken promise evident every year, physically, visibly. It isn't a promise in dogmatic written rules or found in the petty algorithms of the already disenchanted, trapped in the cages of their own viral mimetic self-generated news cycles, which is a bigger topic that's been on my mind a lot. People are being fed themselves back to themselves in this modern algorithmic mimetic reality we live in. These are digital hugs, releasing oxytocin and dopamine into the nervous system. You see, unlike these protesters who harass innocent business people, I, in my faith, who's, by the way, still not on your battlefield, I don't have a leader or a dogma to defend. I simply work with nature, and in my very own shadow journey. I speak to clergy. I think clergy is a noble thing. Christian, pagan, Hindu, Islam, whatever the case. To me, the call to ministry is the call to be a guide, not a ruler. And I think mature ministers and clergy think the same way. Let me say this to those of you who think throwing oil around and harassing other people at a festival or punching someone in the face is some sort of holy warrior activity, which it is not. Look around the world. And I've said this before. Do a comparison. Do all the homework you can. Step outside your own algorithm if you have to. God forbid. Realize that statement could go a lot of ways. Do you really want to live in a one religion, one and only way country? Because look around, they are not the nice places in the world to live. And you won't have to be searching for danger or enemies. They will come to you. And if you want to live there, well, then why don't you go ahead and move there? I'm sure they have their own festivals. Anyway, back to the bridge. Samhain, Halloween. This was a festival time that was celebrated and was also practical for both Christian and pagan populations. It was functional in agrarian economy, not some satanic quote-unquote intrusion onto your version of reality. And I'm saying this to be nice. This is why it's important to know history. It's important to think outside of your own algorithms. It's important for you to understand neuroscience and that the brain looks for enemies when none are present. I'm Daniel Michael, and you're listening to Main Street Universe, the show and network reminding you that the mysteries and possibilities of the universe are closer to Main Street than you may have ever imagined. And remember that you can always listen to the archives here on the YouTube page, which means that next week you can listen to last week, this week, right here, the Main Street Universe YouTube page. Have a beautiful evening, everyone.